Oh, that, yeah. The second part is, I think I actually had this question asked to me last year, except I just hung over to answer it properly. The future kind of pertains to where they're going to balance free-to-play games versus subscription, and a lot of people like, well, subscription's dead, subscription's on the way out. There are still thriving subscription games. I'm sure Rift is still doing well. TERA is still hanging on. Talk about TERA.
Oops. When this game was announced and released, I had no real interest in playing it, despite many who sang the praises of its combat, graphics, and character designs, for better or worse. When the 7-day trial was announced, I signed up for the sake of a side quest, allowing myself to go further than I normally would by maxing a character to the highest trial level of 23. Then all my efforts paid off when I noticed people whining about how I shouldn't be reviewing TERA in my impression show until I reached level 35. So let's say I'm not quite looking forward to this, especially after my week-long out-of-town trip that delayed this even more than I should have. So it's finally time to look at the former subscription title that held on way longer than I expected it to. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at TERA. I'll come right out and say right now that I have issues with this game. Not MapleStory levels of issues, mind you, but much of it does stem from this game's fanbase, so it's got that in common. This game's fanbase is rather dedicated, and it has quite a charm to some people. Released in the States back in mid-2012, TERA is published by Unmas and developed by Bluehole Studios, a company that defected from NCSoft and was actively on the Lineage 3 development team, getting them under fire from NCSoft for apparently stealing concepts and code to create this game. I'll be honest, you can see the Lineage series influence, but then again, no one likes NCSoft. The story of TERA is I don't care. This game certainly doesn't. Coming from a TERA forum someone pointlessly linked this video to, here's what I do. This is a newbie guide from a newbie perspective, letting players know what they can expect when first playing the game. As a free-to-play show, I only cover free-to-play games and content, so if something needs to be unlocked with actual money, I'm probably not going to comment on it. I'm not an endgame grinder, and I don't have the time nor the patience to dedicate my entire day to an MMO, and my 2-week schedule doesn't mean I'm allowed to spend every waking day of those 2 weeks playing the game. I create many characters to try out different class play styles. The reason you often see me recording early game footage is because that's probably just when I'm recording. I speak objectively, meaning I will mention things as negatives and positives, giving reasons for each example, rather than just saying something is awesome or sucks without going any further. There will always be both. With the exception of a particularly notable feature, I don't do research as I report on what I experience in the game. If I wanted to read a wiki article and parrot back the findings to you, I wouldn't bother installing the game in the first place. Still gonna rage? Can't stop you. Let's begin. There are two major things people rant about in this game, and the graphics is the first one. There's a general sense of imagination and style with the environments. Sometimes. It can be rather hit and miss, but there is impressive artistry in the architecture and style to some of the environments. Think the high fantasy style of later Final Fantasy games, but with actual fantasy. They're extremely nice to look at and very high res. The problem is, if you don't have a decent computer, this game's graphics are too good. I was able to run the game on my old PC with minimum settings, and it didn't look too terrible, but while this new PC handles much higher settings, it also doesn't handle the game well for very long periods of time, outright killing my processor and graphics card, and twice now I've had a near overheat when trying to play for a few hours at a time, to the point that my entire computer runs like garbage until I shut it off. And there's another reason I can't get that far into it. The game's interface is kind of an ugly, jumbled mess, and unquestionably geared toward widescreen, high-resolution monitors. I had to lean in and squint to read much of the UI the first time I loaded this game up, and until I hunted down the option to up the scaling of the UI, not just the text, the entire UI has to be scaled, with the exception of the chat block, I was immediately forced to find a balance between being able to read it and just having it encompass my entire playfield. You can adjust individual portions of the UI at your leisure, but too large doesn't give you much room to work with. It would be nice if I could scale only certain parts of the UI. Speaking of scaling, while enemy design is interesting on its own right, some being more imaginative than others, you do tend to run into a lot of the same enemies early on, giving you little more than size scaling or palette swapping for differentiating stronger monsters. It does eventually get more varied. The game also bafflingly requires you to leave the launcher up as you play, which is used to be this massive, atrocious window, but now is a slightly less atrocious but still kind of annoying window. While you can close it as the game starts, you may find it giving you lip when you switch servers or heading back out to the character selection screen, sometimes even shutting the game down to tell you that you should leave the launcher up. It's a pain. If you have the ability to run the game, it's pretty, I'll give it that, but be wary of just how much you can handle. I'll be honest that in-game I don't really notice the music, but again, this is another one of those soundtracks that's amazing, but just much harder to appreciate unless you're listening to it outside of the game. For the most part, it's serving as ambiance, and easily unnoticed, but I do enjoy the music changes to a boss theme when you engage in combat with an elite monster. Sound is also there. It's, again, nothing that grasps your attention, but it's not so far out of the norm that I wouldn't call it unfitting. It works, although I can't help but feel it's dipping into the occasional stock sound effect. Is it just me, or does this creature's death gurgle sound a lot like a monster from Binding of Isaac? The game features a bit of voice acting, and it's not very consistent. There's some good reads, some okay reads, and some reads that are so terrible muted and lazy they're almost hilarious.
Don't get cocky. Impressive to them, but it takes more than that to impress me. And I have little tolerance for glory hounds like you.
Starting out, besides squinting at the horribly tiny text, you can choose from a few servers. There are two server types, PvE and PvP, and one of the PvE servers, Celestial Hills, is tagged as Roleplay server. Yeah, good luck with that. During the initial rush to play this game, servers underwent ridiculous queues, the logging screen promising rewards to those forced to wait for over 10 minutes, and more popular servers requiring nearly an hour to enter during peak times. This fervor has seemingly subsided, and the queues don't seem to pop up much anymore. You may only create 2 characters per server. The game has several races to choose from, including the standard humans, the sexy demonic Kastanik, the not-so-sexy demonic Aman, and the ethereally beautiful High Elves. Each of these races can be chosen as male or female. However, there are 3 races that cannot: the Baraka, a hulking, massive-like rockmen, the Papori, small, bear-like animal creatures, and the diminutive Ellen. Ah, yes, the Ellen. I'd call this TERA's elephant in the room, but everyone mentions it, so I'm probably not bringing this to the attention of anyone who didn't know, but provided you didn't, man, y'all in for a treat. The Ellen are a race of nature-focused, well, sprites, if you will, but you probably already noticed, despite their apparent quadruple-digit ages, they look like they're 10-year-old girls. All of them. Again, like the Baraka and Papori, they are gender-locked, and yes, pretty much TERA's lowly race, even gaining a bit of controversy when the US localization team decided to slightly change the Ellen, who are normally pantsless wearing bikini-bottom thongs, with still terrifyingly short shorts. There was a major fanboy outcry of "Ermagerd censorship!" just because Unmasked didn't want to end up on the next episode of To Catch a Predator. Besides forcing their precious lowlies to wear booty shorts, Unmasked took this older-than-they-look concept further by giving the Ellen comically deep voices. It's disturbing enough that despite not sounding like little girls as they do in the Korean version, some of which still lingers in ambient voice clips, they now come across as sultry, and henceforth it's more disturbing.
Tell me more. Tell me anything. Don't skip your meals. Are you looking for me? Watch your back and your front.
It's a major shift in the wrong direction. This isn't skirting the issue, this is driving a Hummer H2 on monster truck wheels decorated with truck nuts levels of overcompensation here. Regardless, if you are honestly one of those people who threw a fit over this horrific injustice, or you're gonna tell me, well, it's okay to sexualize them because they're actually thousands of years old. 1, shut the fuck up, and 2, I bet you thought I'd killed that joke. Good. Now that I've alienated that particular group of people, let's move on to the classes. I appreciate the slight changes to the formula here, as despite you probably having heard most of these classes before, some play in a different manner than you'd expect. For example, the first on the list is the Warrior, who, while you might be picturing as a classic sword and board tank, is actually a speed and dodge-focused dual-wielding class, capable of tanking in this manner, but requiring a large amount of skill to perform that properly. The more traditional tank is the Lancer, who carries a massive lance and shield for blocking, allowing themselves to be portable walls for the rest of the party to hide behind. For melee-focused attackers, there's the Slayer, a slow, two-handed sword user who attacks with a high-damage knockdown attacks, but still possesses the speed and maneuverability to avoid damage, making them a good beginner class. Another bruiser class is the Berserker, who wear heavier armor than Slayers, do more damage with two-handed axes, but are much, much slower. For people who prefer mages, there's the Sorcerer, the ranged magic damage class that wears cloth and do excellent burst damage from afar. If you're looking for a physical approach to range damage, choose the Archer, who plays the game like a shooter and is a pretty easy class to grasp the concept of, even if they don't take beatings very well. Healers exist in two forms, the first being the priest, who's set up as a direct healer, keeping the party's health up with simple spells, while the other healer class, the mystic, acts more like a secondary support class, healing by creating health and mana pickups for the party, buffing party members, and they can even summon minions to battle alongside them. With your decision made, you'll head into the character creator, which, while fairly in-depth for most MMOs, won't allow you to perform any modification to the body, so you're stuck tweaking the character's hair, face, and that's it. When you create your character, you're allowed to choose to go on the tutorial mission, which offers a bit of story, or just head right into the main game. The tutorial starts you off at level 20, giving you a few skills right off the bat and helps as a way to get a feel for this class as well as the game itself. Choosing to skip this or completing it sets you on the Island of Dawn Newbie Island at level 1. To me, this seems rather redundant, as even though the tutorial level teaches you the basics of skill and control, while the Newbie Island tells you the basics of exploration and questing, it just comes across as unnecessary, especially as slow as this game is to start. Controls are simple enough to grasp. The game controls a bit like a first-person shooter, except that you run in the direction you press WASD instead of turning or strafing. You target with the mouse using the reticle in the center to focus your target, and then press left-click to fire your basic attack or hotkey skills to use any other skills that you've acquired. You can technically reassign any skill to any available hotkey, including both right and left click, if there's a configuration you find more comfortable. If you're not as into the mouse and keyboard style of control, the game will automatically detect the use of a controller, as well as giving you a heads-up display of what buttons to press in order to perform what skills. It's a really nice touch, even if I do prefer mouse and keyboard. Now onto that other thing people constantly rave about in this game, the combat system. For those of you who watched my stream and know that I don't even remotely agree that TERA is the be-all end-all of MMO combat, I can still at least understand the charm. This is one of the first times I recall that a world MMO has placed a major focus on an action combat system. Yes, I reviewed Raiders and DCUO, but you can really tell that this game was built around this ideal and little else. Enemies telegraph moves, dodging and strafing is encouraged. Each class feels built around this system in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're just copies of each other. Slayers, Warriors, Lancers, and Berserkers are all melee classes, but not a single one of them feels like I'm playing the other. One thing you might notice about skills as you play is the combo system, where some skills can chain into others or gain special abilities when used in conjunction with other skills. You can even customize some of these. When a skill is available as a combo, you'll be able to more easily use it with a spacebar prompt. Remember that if the ability that is prompted is still on cooldown, you won't be able to use it, even if it's appeared. The loot system in this game is similar to that of its supposed inspiration. In that, like Lineage 2, loot drops on the ground, but this time it can be much more easily picked up by pressing F near it. F is also the catch-all use key in this game, that'll let you converse with NPCs and gather from gathering nodes. Gathering nodes, while obviously used for eventual crafting purposes, will grant you temporary buffs that will even stack, so even if you're not looking to craft, you can pick them up for an extra edge in combat. While you start with a bit of a limited inventory, you get a decent amount more when reaching level 11, and can even purchase more slots from an inventory expansion NPC. It works very similar to Ion. Speaking of Ion similarities, you can track the objectives of your quests, be they monsters to kill or items to collect, by clicking on the names in the quest log, which will highlight the locations on your minimap. This is one of the few games I've played where the minimap is 50 times more useful than the full map. The minimap will display locations, paths, NPCs, and your tracked monsters, all while remaining in a semi-translucent manner on the screen, while the main map is a pretty much useless overview of the continent you're on. It's about as useful as trying to find your local grocery store on a globe. While the combat does things differently, unfortunately the questing system does nothing out of the norm. It's a collection of kill quests, item retrieval quests, and FedEx quests, and you really shouldn't expect to see anything more from the game's questing system. Standard MMO fare applies, but some are more willing to tolerate this lack of imagination with this combat system in place. Quests are usually obtained by your standard talk to NPC, read or skip quest text, complete and repeat formula, but some quests are given special treatment by having cutscenes to introduce them, like this apocalyptic event that must be halted for the betterment of the world.
Vecus the Wicked has a thing for piglings, I guess. Let him pick on something his own size. Or at least something that's not a pig.
You might think that was incredibly stupid, but before we embark on this vital task, let's grab the quest from the guy behind him. After all, we can't let some horrible tree monster going around picking on innocent pigs. Why? Because apparently that's our job. This might seem like a minor thing to get mad at, but this is easily one of the most mockable moments in this entire game. We have devoted an entire cutscene to showcasing the evils of this horrible tree picking on these poor little pigs, and in the exact same block of quests, get told to kill those exact same pigs for the sake of practice. How do I know this isn't some sort of elaborate scam, and when it's my turn to go kill those pigs, some guy isn't going to come to off me because that NPC told him I was the evil guy picking on the pigs? You know, with this and the previous clip of Mr. Enthusiastic Voice Actor I showed earlier, is it possible for this game to have a cutscene that isn't entirely stupid? My main immersion breaker for TERA is this. It's stupid. It is unabashedly stupid. It doesn't even remotely take itself seriously, and the quest names are mostly terrible puns and shoehorned pop culture references. You might see the chat asking where to find BAMs, which are massive elite monsters that roam the maps. What's BAMs stand for? Big Ass Monsters. This is not a community nickname. This is the official, unapologetic name of the things branded by the publisher. It's like an MMO crafted for frat boys. Okay, back to combat and the like. You might find the game features a painfully slow health regen, more than likely as a deterrent from being hit, because let's face it, if the system allows you to block or dodge and negate damage, you probably should do that. If you're looking to restore health due to constant failure to avoid taking hits, look into purchasing some bandages or potions to get yourself back up to full quickly. You will take fall damage if you drop a major height in this game, but it will not outright kill you. It might as well, but since it'll only leave you with a single hit point of damage, you can heal back up with little issue. If you do manage to die, you can either lie on the field and hope someone will revive you, either with an item or with a spell, or you can release, which will immediately transport you to the nearest res location. You won't lose any experience or anything, but you will lose all of your stamina, and have a chance to break any enhancement crystals that you have equipped. Stamina is an odd system choice, but here's how it works. You may notice a heart with a percentile number, usually at some impossible total like 120%. Having your stamina at full or more allows you to do more damage when you're out fighting, and once it dips below 100%, your damage output and even hit points will take a hit as well. In order to restore it, you'll have to find a campfire, which are usually located in towns or camps, or even as a personal usable item that you can create anywhere on the field. If you see a personal campfire left on the field, you'll also regain stamina by standing near it, even if it wasn't dropped by you or anyone in your party, so don't worry about that. Campfires also allow you to grant yourself some temporary buffs by use of various charms that you can throw into them. The buff you receive is random and depends on the 3 types of charms used. You can only have one type of charm buff at any time, and they'll vanish if your stamina dips below 100%. The crystals I also mentioned are simple, easily purchased socketed items that you can place in your weapons or your armor, provided they have a slot for them. These add properties to your attacks, like boosting damage if the enemy is below a certain health percentage, or if you're standing behind an enemy when you attack. They're also very easy to remove and replace, considering dying can break them. It's a pretty good thing that they are dime a dozen. Just keep an eye out for even better ones that may drop from monsters or be offered as quest rewards, and slot the ones that best fit your current class or playstyle. Another important customization feature is unlocked at level 20 with the Glyph System. I say it's important to mention is, besides the fact it's not seen until level 20, the game doesn't really bother telling you about it. Once you hit 20, you can head back to Velica, the first main city, and talk to the horrible voice-acted knight who will give you a quest to unlock the ability. With Glyphs, you can boost aspects of your skills rather than your stats, tweaking their damage, speed, function, and so forth. You have a limited amount of glyph points, so while you can purchase and equip all you want, you can only actively have a certain amount at a time. 10 points at level 20, with 1 point per level until you reach a cap of 50. Make sure you activate them too, as it's pretty easy to miss this. You might notice, especially on the Island of Dawn, that it's annoying to get around on foot. Luckily, there's a few forms of fast travel available. First is as simple as finding a teleport NPC and traveling to a location you visited. You'll be transported there instantly at varying costs of money. There's also purchasable scrolls that can accomplish this for some areas. At the end of the Newbie area, you'll be given a quest to obtain a mount, which requires a bit of running around Velica, but gaining the mount will make foot travel much easier and will feel like an absolute must for your first foray into the main continent. The last is what allows you to travel between the areas of the game, a Pegasus that will take you to an overly long scenic route that will eventually involve you traveling through an overly lengthy time vortex. Gameplay-wise, I can understand why people have fun with this game, but I just don't find anything overly special about it. But I suppose it's time to introduce you to the people that I will be inevitably dealing with. Okay, this is probably the main reason I was so concerned with this video. This game features some seriously fanatical players. Seeing comments about my side quest and trial experience claiming you shouldn't be allowed to review this game until you reach level 35 unquestionably soured me on this game. One, I did go above and beyond what I was supposed to be doing for what was essentially a first impressions video, and two, if your game requires one to play it to a certain fairly deep level before they can decide whether the game is good or not, that's not the mark of a good game that gets better, that's Stockholm Syndrome. Despite the servers being separated, the game also features multiple channels, so that you're not absolutely swamped with other players when you're out questing. Just make sure that you have friends playing that you're both on the same channel. At level 15, you gain the ability to start queuing for dungeons. Well, dungeon. It's a pretty simple looking for group tool that allows you to choose which dungeon you'd like to join and what role you'd want to take. When the party's filled, you'll be transported to the dungeon. Apparently, from what I've heard, the game originally didn't allow the warrior class to queue as a tank, but from what I've been told now, it's been fixed. I highly suggest instance matching because good God, area chat and global chat are worthless. I don't remember it being all that great when it was a sub-game, but the free-to-play conversion brought them all out. You know who I mean. People who spend the entire time trolling, arguing, spouting memes, or just being an endless swarm of chuckle nuts. It's a pity, considering that you'll eventually end up with a lot of quests where you will need other people to join you, as the monsters you need to kill will have far too much HP for you and do too much damage to defeat easily at your appropriate level. One way that seems to work is to head to the area that the monster spawns and just hope others show up on the same quest. Then ask them to join your party or have them invite you. There are decent people who play this game, but they are completely drowned out by the abhorrent chat channels. When you're in a party with strangers or friends, there's an easily missed feature that really helps with the sharing aspect of quest and crafting nodes. Since it is so easy to miss, I'll explain what you do. Normally, when you get a quest where you have to gather items from the map in node form, you'll have to trade looting them in order to get credit. However, if you start looting the node before your party member who's looting the node finishes the animation, you'll both gain credit once they've finished looting. This saves a lot of time when questing and allows everyone in the party to gain crafting node buffs at the same time. So don't be afraid to start looting if you see another party member doing it. This will not work with non-party members, however. One very unique feature, which tends to not be mentioned when singing the praises of this game, is the political system. While unique, in an MMO it could very well be considered the worst idea ever. The system is very much a reflection of real-life politics. Once you reach a certain level, are the leader of a guild with 20 or more members, and pay 3,000 gold and 100 Katherinak awards, you can apply to campaign as a Vanarch. You can then choose which area of the game you wish to campaign for, where the Vanarch will have control over taxing the vendors, which will give a percentage of NPC vendor sales to players, place specialty shops on the map, add skill trainers to more convenient locations on the map, all using their given or earned policy points to make that area a better place. Or worse. So yes, once you hit level 20 and have your chance to vote, prepare to be bombarded with campaign promises only to have half the players complaining about whatever guild in the area is currently in power. Just like living in America, really. You can tell which guild runs the area by the banners you'll find scattered throughout the map. For those of you wondering about the actual role-playing aspect in this game, I'm sure it exists, but even the roleplay server is swarming with people just being chuckleheads in the chat channels. Wait, hold on, is someone actually speaking as a role-player in here? The Night Crusader comes upon an awkward sight. A creature is never mind. Okay, I am happy to report that besides the annoying limit on characters per server, TERA hasn't converted itself into a pay-to-win title. Most everything found in the cash shop is some form of convenience item, cosmetic outfit, and what have you. Points and services come fairly cheap, with less than $5 worth of points for more character slots. You may also subscribe to the game by obtaining the Elite status. Much like the subscription option to the Secret World, this option doesn't so much loosen restrictions, as there aren't really any, as much as grant the massive rewards and conveniences each month that you're subscribed, like allowing you to use a much faster mount and teleport places at will, free keys to open the ever-present and free-to-play MMO popular standard of the lockbox. If you really like the game, Elite status will make the game much easier to enjoy, but the shop should really be browsed at your leisure to see if there's anything you can't live without. Despite my best to be fair to this game, I honestly don't enjoy it, but I fully understand why people would. Those who are annoyed with, bored with, or tired of the target-and-click combat of EverQuest and WoW have a whole new way to play, and for many that's all they were looking for in a game like this. For me and other more jaded MMO players, there's little this game does to make it truly special, and the fanaticism and community attitude catapults this game from merely tolerable into something I just don't enjoy at all. Still, it's a solid and polished free game, and if you have any interest in trying it, there's no time like the present. Here's my final rating. Everyone raves about TERA for its combat, and while I hardly feel it's the best system for this out there, it's unquestionably the most well-designed and polished version of it. Every action feels deliberate, and every enemy is built around testing your skill set, making later fights an interesting challenge much more than circle strafing and attacking when it's clear. The environments are quite nice to look at, with the early areas looking quite spectacular when you stop to take it all in. The game looks nice in general, even if some areas have a bit less imagination than others. Finally, this is another free-to-play conversion that doesn't completely neuter the abilities that you'd had if you were a subscriber, so despite losing a character slot, expect little to nothing to have changed. Seriously limited character slots is always a pet peeve of mine, and in a game with so many classes and races to try out, it seems annoying to be stuck with only 2 per server. Otherwise, the shop is best utilized for cosmetic tweaks and boosts. Of course, if you're looking for the most bang for your buck, upgrading and maintaining an elite status will give you an edge to convenience. I think half the reason the fanbase of TERA insists on you reaching a certain level before you can talk about it is because the game paces itself very poorly. It's almost like it's trying way too hard to ease you into a combat and control system that honestly isn't all that hard to grasp. The enemies on the Island of Dawn are laughably weak and insultingly easy to defeat, and even outside of Newbie Island you don't start to experience any sort of real challenges until level 20 or so, and the level gaining is painfully slow. It's the fanbase and community that tend to make the game so tough for me to deal with, and the chat is a graveyard for sanity. Consider playing alongside friends or people who are into the game if you're mostly looking to get a better group experience. Finally, and most importantly, the game is a beast to run. Cutting settings to lower or minimum isn't too much of a detriment to how they look, but in a game where reacting to telegraphed enemy moves is the difference between life and death, a low frame rate will mean the end of you. If you don't have the chops to run it smoothly in at least the lowest configuration, give this a pass. Next time, I'll be looking to do an episode on something I've been looking forward to for a while now, with a new take on a fairly new genre.
Whoa, Nelly!